Jay Underwood! Michael Bailey Smith! Carl Cafalio! I get everybody?
No.
Who's
Dr. Doom?
Doom?
Yeah.
Joseph Cole! Y'all want to know what that surprise is, don't you?
Yeah.
Ole Sansone, director of the Fantastic Four! I just lost my voice doing that. Project. Yes, project, that's right. Without a microphone, you project.
Dave Dyer put this convention on. It is the first time ever that we have been assembled to see this film. It was made by
92.
And Dave, here in St. Louis, thanks to you guys, you've given us all a wonderful memory. It's a far better film now, seeing it in this context than we ever would have dreamed. And you guys have been part of something very special in the lives of actors, directors, and artists. And that's all I want to say is thank you very much.
For a movie that's never come out, I was thinking about this. This is the first time I ever got to see it with an audience. So really, thank you.
You can hear me ask questions, but you guys just saw the film. Let's see some hands. Let's see some questions here. Who's got a question for the cast here?
Are you kidding with all those guys that run the audience? Everybody has something to say out there.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's ask Ole here. Ole, tell us the backstory of this film.
That's a long backstory.
That's a long backstory.
Which part do you
Well,
want?
I was working with Roger Corman, and he called and said, would you like to do this movie about the Fantastic Four? And I mean, I didn't have to, I just said yes. Obviously, it was, I've been watching the Fantastic Four cartoons when I was a kid, and reading the comic books, and it was just great. Of course, he said we don't have a whole lot of money. But I knew that working with Roger. But we decided that it was really important because knowing what our limited budget was, how to style this film and how to make this movie true to the comic book and to the characters more than anything, and to the fan base, and it's reproduction. But got that, and we just, and then of course I got all of the comics, and they were all in hardbound. You could buy them all the volumes, and we studied them as if I was studying Shakespeare. We just went through every single frame of it, looked at the angles and the tilted shots and the way they drew things, and we said we have to try to duplicate this. But the most important thing was stylistically and characteristically, what we were trying to do with the film was to bring it to a place where we said, all right, we know we're not going to be able to compete with real big budgeted films, but let's be true to the characters and true to the style of the original, and try to make it more like a real comic book feel and a real comic book movie, and not, because we knew it just couldn't do what all the visual effects, and frankly, back then people became extraordinary people, and that's what it was, the focus was obviously on this film. And lucky for me that, and lucky for everybody that sees this movie, that I got this really amazing cast. I mean, this is like the most dedicated group of people. And I mean, Joseph was talking about Shakespeare. Dude was Shakespearean. I mean, this guy, I mean, everybody did such a, for New Constantine to keep the contract, to keep the rights rather, to keep this movie so they could go make the big one later. And it was kind of like they just, after it was made, after we shot it, it was kind of like we didn't know where anybody was anymore. It kind of just fell off the map. It was like, well, Roger didn't seem like he cared anymore, and it was just kind of let it die. And none of us wanted to let it die. And so I got those guys, the music guys wanted to keep going, and I was telling a story out front about, I started making another movie, and the editor from this movie, I hired him to edit the next movie, and we would take the film off the flatbed, because we were still cutting on film and flatbeds, took the film off the flatbed of the film that I was working on, and brought in this movie at night to finish it after the producers of the movie I was working on left. So they couldn't see us using their nickel and their equipment to finish this movie. No, it was Cinetel.
It was Cinetel. Oh, good.
So it really was like, and Jan, who was the post-production supervisor, we kept slipping her all the elements, you know, back over at Corman's, and she would just kind of squeeze them in and go to the lab, you know, with some of the other films that Roger was churning out. I mean, and the craziest thing is when the film was finished, I don't know what happened. Roger sort of like all of a sudden, maybe you guys can tell me, kind of came back on board, and we were going to have a big opening at the Mall of the Americas. And they were running the trailer, they cut the trailer out.
They sent us on junkets.
Well, by that time, we had Michael and
Yeah,
I,
there you
and
go.
then Joseph, and by then, and everybody was involved. We figured something was going on. It was about a year that we were sort of in the dark about it.
Yeah.
And I think I'd done another Roger movie or something, and we had a publicist, and the guy at the studio, when we came up with this idea, he said, go ahead. And Roger, remember, Roger, the only thing he ever gave us was 1,000 stills, black and white stills, some of which are probably still available on the table tomorrow. It just shows you how little this film has changed in the 18 years. And they, with their blessing, they said, go out and build an audience. And we would go to places like this, but we would never show the film because Oli was, you know, still cutting it. And we got this trailer. So that's as far as we ever got. And we got very close within about a month. It was sort of like a bluff, I suppose, in a poker game. And the ultimate winner was the fellow that neither of us had ever met, maybe Oli had met, and who just passed away a few months ago, Bert Eichinger, who was, you know, he was a good film producer. I think that what Oli's saying is, that I've always felt, is that Roger was shrewd enough to know that if this could be a good enough film to justify releasing it, at least getting it out there, that he would be proud of us, but he was also shrewd enough never to be officially on the record as sort of saying, go ahead, Oli, because he'd done a deal with the original owner that sort of precluded this film ever being seen the light of day. So we lived in this gray area that, in many ways, I was hesitant of actually seeing the film in its entirety in an audience because it's such a myth about it, you know? And I'm glad that it's relieved because I really enjoyed watching it.
Well, the great irony, of course, is that